أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا نبينا خاتم المرسلين أبو القاسم محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين عذب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد أما بعد قال الله عز وجل رب زدني علما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. My dear friends, I hope that this finds you in best of health and happiness, and I hope everyone is doing well. I remember you every day when I do my namaz Isha, and inshallah, all of you remember me as well when you're doing your duas. Remember me in your duas. So the ayat that I recited, everybody knows it really well. It's from Surah Taha. It's verse number 114, where Allah teaches us to read this dua, my Lord, increase me in knowledge. Knowledge, we know how important that is, especially being from the Jafri faith. That's the group that we belong to, the school of thought that we belong to. The importance of gaining knowledge and being in that continuous mode of learning is so very important to who we are as followers of the Holy Alphabet. And so, my dear friends, this is the dua that we need to do every day. I know we did this a lot when we were students, when we were growing up and we were in school, just before the test, we would recite this dua, but we are in that mode of learning, continuous learning, and inshallah, we will continue on this journey of gaining knowledge. Right now, there are so many opportunities of gaining knowledge. Knowledge is at our fingertips. There's so much knowledge that a lot of times we don't know what to start, like, so for example, reading the Quran and understanding the Quran and how to recite the Quran properly, how to the importance of Arabic grammar and tafsir of the Quran. Everything is there on the internet. We just have to reach out and make use of that wealth and sea of knowledge that's available out there. So what I would like to do today is talk about our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, because I know that all of us are celebrating Father's Day, and our sixth Imam is the father of chemistry. So you know that I'm a scientist, and what I do is chemistry. And so I would like to dedicate the few minutes that I have with you to talking about the father of chemistry, who is Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So a little bit about his life, his contributions to the world of science. And I have to tell you that a lot of times we read books and it just depends on what's happening around us, that like certain things in that book will come to our attention. And we might like read a book and go over the contents and not pay attention to certain paragraphs or certain things that we had read in the book because of, like what's happening around us. So we know that we are passing through very challenging times right now with this coronavirus, and people are getting kind of tired of like staying at home and not going out and socializing and not meeting with friends and relatives. And it's been very challenging for us, and one of the things that has brought to our attention is being healthy. Like, how do we stay healthy? And so I was reading about the sixth Imam, and this wasn't, so we know our sixth Imam was the greatest scientist. And there's so many contributions, not only to chemistry, but to biology and physics and the other sciences as well as the Islamic sciences. He was the father of all of these subjects, and he actually was the one who introduced a lot of these subjects, mathematics and so on. But one of the things that was really interesting is I was reading this debate that he was having with an atheist person, a person who didn't really believe in Allah. And our sixth Imam is describing to this person all the things that you don't see. And because one of the things this man was telling our sixth Imam is, if you don't see something and you don't feel something and you don't hear something, like our five senses, if you don't use those to know what Allah is, then how do we believe in Allah? And our sixth Imam is giving this person examples and telling him, like you don't have to really feel and see and smell to believe, because how do you know what's happening inside your body? Like for example, the blood that is going around and getting distributed, and then it goes back to the heart, to get cleaned up and so on. And I don't know much about biology, but her Imam is talking about the flow of blood, which in those days people didn't even know that this is what blood does. And the name of this atheist is Abu Shakir. And so he's talking to Abu Shakir, and he's telling Abu Shakir about these little things that are inside our body, that if we didn't have them, then we would not be alive and thriving. And he said there are so many, many of these little things in our body that that are there, like Allah has put it there so that they carry out a lot of important functions. And then you can't even see them, but they are there. And there are innumerable of those. And so our sixth Imam was talking about the bacteria inside our body. And we know today that the microbiome that makes up a human being, it's like trillions and trillions of bacteria that reside within us. And most of those are beneficial bacteria. They are there because they do a lot of important functions. And so as I was reading about what the sixth Imam is telling this person, it was so amazing that the sixth Imam is talking about the microbiome that people didn't even know anything about until I would say maybe like 40 years ago is when people started realizing how important these bacteria are that live within our gut. Not only in our gut, but like they are there on our skin, they are there in every organ of our body, and they actually are affecting how we think and feel, and even the dreams that we dream in the night. So it's just amazing that the sixth Imam is talking about this. And I'm sure I must have read about it before, but it didn't come to my attention because, like I wasn't focused on health at that point. And so I read it and I kind of like just glanced over it, and it didn't really hit me. And then a few days ago, when I was reading about this, I was like really struck that the sixth Imam is talking about the microbiome that nobody had any idea about until maybe about like 50 years ago, when like we know how important it is to eat yogurt, because that brings like the active cultures that are good for our stomach, and like feeling good inside, and having that good bacteria getting created inside, that then like they promote good health. So that is what I was really struck about. And so what I would like to do is share about that contribution of the sixth Imam, what he's talking about, and then how we can promote our own health, and how do we stay healthy, especially in these times when we know that if we are compromised in any way, then that coronavirus, which is always there looming on our heads, inshallah, all of us are going to be saved from, like having this um, uh, this pandemic. So we want to make sure that we stay healthy. And so I'll take a little bit of time talking about, like the microbiome, because the sixth imam is talking about it to this person who's an atheist and telling him, like, you don't see that microbiome inside your body, but Allah has put it there for a reason. So we'll talk about that, and then talk about the contributions of the sixth Imam, which we all know, but every year we get that opportunity to just review and go over our heads the contribution of the sixth Imam as far as the sciences. And then we all know that we are facing these challenging times when we see so much aggression, so much oppression, injustice going on, especially in the U.S. And so a little bit about the sixth Imam and what he stood for as far as justice. With it didn't matter, like what color somebody was or what background somebody was. All of our imams did that. But since we are focusing on the sixth Imam, I would like to tell, like one or two stories about his life and what he did. And then that's about it. I have a few sayings of the sixth Imam that I would like to share. And inshallah, this is like a reminder for all of us, the contributions of our sixth Imam. So, my dear friends, let's go ahead. So our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he had a profound influence on Islamic thought and sciences. And it wasn't just him, it was also our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, who was also so very instrumental in spreading knowledge. So we know the importance of knowledge, starting with the Prophet. The Prophet had said that gain knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And then he had said that even if we have to go to China to get education and to get knowledge, we need to go there. And of course, there are so many beautiful sayings of our Imam, our first Imam, Maula Ali Mushkil Kusha, that somebody who does worship, somebody who's knowledgeable and does worship, there the level of that worship is elevated in the sight of Allah than somebody who does not really, who's ignorant. So even the level of worship is elevated for someone who has that knowledge. So our fifth Imam had started a university, and this university, what's also amazing that I didn't know before is that our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, helped build that university. Like when that masjid was getting built, he helped with laying the bricks. So he wasn't very old. He was maybe about 8 or 9 years old when the masjid was getting built by the fifth Imam, which would become the university in Medina. And this is in 105 Hijri that this happened. And the sixth Imam, even though he was so very young, at that young age, he wanted to make that difference. He told his father, I'm going to go and help build that mosque. So he was the one who laid the foundation physically as well as spiritually. We know that his contribution after that masjid was constructed, and it became a university, a learning center that attracted people from all over the world. He laid that foundation of that masjid, like physically laid that foundation with putting bricks. And it wasn't, it's written by historians that it wasn't just something, like a gesture. Sometimes when little kids help out with some work, they'll do something for a little bit and then they'll run away and play, and then like maybe they'll show up later on when they want to help again. But our sixth Imam was so very dedicated that he was there with the laborers, laying that foundation brick by brick to build that masjid. And so that foundation was laid by our fifth Imam, and then our sixth Imam continued on that excellent work. He lived to be 65 years of age, and the whole time was spent in spreading knowledge. Right when he was a little boy and he was playing with other little children, he would become the teacher teaching the little children. So right from a young age, he was there. And then when the university was constructed, what's really striking also is that at the age of 10, he had joined the university and he was debating with the scholars, grown men who would be there. He would debate with those scholars. So in that university, there was Quran that was being taught, Hadith, jurisprudence, Kalam, sciences, cosmology, and historians record that about 30 different subjects were taught in the school. Some of the students of our Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam are Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, who became independent exponents of fiqh and jurisprudence and were founders of the Hanafi and the Maliki group that, like there are, I think, more than like 35-40% of Sunnis, they belong to these group of thoughts. Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who lived in the 3rd century, were also influenced indirectly by Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam. And then Imam's student Husham bin Hakimi was the founder of the science of Kalam. So what I get really excited about is that the father of chemistry, the founder of experimental chemistry, is none other than our sixth Imam. And so we know that there's a great scientist by the name of Jabir ibn Hayyan, who is called Gibber in English. He was the founder of experimental chemistry, and he was a student of Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam and later on Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam. So he was somebody who founded experimental chemistry because he learned from our sixth Imam the importance of engaging. So people would be very philosophical before, like we have so many different philosophers who were very prominent in those days and before, like Aristotle and so on, and Socrates and so on, who would just describe things from their thoughts. There was nothing like experimentally finding out what's going on. It was just from their thoughts that they would come up with things. For example, we know that Aristotle had that four elements, which is like air, water, fire. I don't remember what the earth, fire, water, and air. So these were the four elements they thought made up the whole world. And this was more philosophical than it was experimental. And until our sixth Imam started teaching about experimental chemistry, that thought didn't even occur in the mind of a human being that you can actually experiment with things. And this was the way of teaching of the sixth Imam. It wasn't just, like I'm talking about chemistry here, I'm talking about physics and so on. This was the way of teaching even the Islamic sciences. So before the sixth Imam, the way that the sixth Imam and the fifth Imam taught people was the way of being engaged. They would encourage people to ask questions. They would encourage people to debate. So it didn't matter, like I gave the example of this person, Abu Shakir, who is debating with the sixth Imam about the existence of Allah himself. Like people would be scared to go and talk about these subjects before, even though maybe they were sick mentally, thinking there is no Allah and having these doubts in their heads, but they would not be comfortable talking about, like the existence of Allah himself. But because of the encouragement from the fifth Imam and the sixth Imam, people would openly debate. So one of the things that our sixth Imam would do is he would say, let me finish my lecture, and then you can ask me questions. As many questions as you want to ask, you can ask me. So just like our first Imam, like he would say the same thing, Saluni, Saluni. So the same thing, all our Imams were open to debates, open to, like questions. It didn't matter whether somebody was a believer or disbeliever or, an atheist that didn't even believe in Allah himself, they would be open. So this mode of teaching and training, which is like very It's like debate oriented, actively engaging students is what attracted a whole bunch of students. They came from all over the world to join this university. So experimental chemistry was founded by our sixth Imam, and then Jabir ibn Hayyan took those ideas from the sixth Imam and continued on. And he has written a lot of papers, and every paper starts with, "This is from my teacher, Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam." So he acknowledges the contribution of his teacher in opening up his mind to experimental chemistry in the papers that he's published. So on the basis of the experiments, he came to the conclusion that Earth has many simple substances, some of them like mercury metals, some are sulfur-like nonmetals, and some are salt-like compounds. And Jabir ibn Hayyan, we know that he introduced a lot of techniques in experimental chemistry, such as filtration, distillation, sublimation, crystallization. And because of these techniques, Jabir was able to isolate 30 pure compounds. And so he was pursuing chemistry as a knowledge. Our sixth Imam was also the first to make the distinction between a star and a planet. He also gave an explanation of the difference in the color of the stars as due to the distance from the Earth. The science of astronomy was so well established in the Arab world that Al-Khwarizmi calculated the diameter of the Earth as 6,500 miles. Right now, the value of Earth, the diameter of the Earth, people have calculated with, like more precision, is 7,260 miles, which, like if you round up 6,500, you come to like 7,000. So what he predicted was really close to what we can do today with all our modern day techniques. And its circumference as 20,000 miles, present value is 24,000 miles. The value of the dimension of the Earth was later used by Al-Birdami to calculate the heights of mountains. And then we have Sheikh Nasiruddin Tusi, who was the first to establish an observatory in Baghdad in 670 AH and published the trigonometric tables to calculate the position of the stars. So trigonometry was started during the time of our sixth Imam. Abu Ali Hassan ibn Haytham, who died in 1021 AD, was the first to describe the inertia of material objects. The motion of a moving object from the position of its rest was given by Newton in 1630 and as the first law of motion. Some of the philosophers of Islam, such as Sheikh Sadruddin Shirazi, Mullah Sadr is what we know commonly as, were not influenced by Greek philosophy of motion, but had their own original ideas. And all of these ideas were, of course, created by our sixth Imam. Mullah Sadr, who lived about the same time as Newton, presented his revolutionary ideas about time, space, and motion in his famous book, which is called Asfar Arbaya. He was the first to suggest that time and space are not absolute quantities, but are flexible. He also suggested a fourth dimension, an idea that Einstein later on presented mathematically as the special theory of relativity. Then we have biology. So we talked about kind of physics and chemistry. We come to biology now. The science of, like when somebody is sick, we call it tib, right, in Urdu and Arabic. That science did not even exist before our sixth Imam. And our sixth Imam was the one who first started it. So before the sixth Imam, when somebody got sick, they would just, like maybe drink something or eat something to get better. And it wasn't like a science that could be practiced. The knowledge of the anatomy of the human body by Imam Sadiq and his remedies were greatly expanded by subsequent Muslim scholars. So we have a great book that is written by, actually our eighth Imam also wrote that in the time of Harun, and then our sixth Imam, he had like a whole bunch of remedies, and you can Google and see, like what all our sixth Imam has, and you will, you will see how important those are. Because a lot of times, like right now, people are focusing on this natural medicines that you can just get by what people practice all around the world, and it's becoming a common knowledge for a great many scientists. The noted among Muslim scholars were Sheikh Bu Ali Sina. We know that he was the one who wrote a book called The Canon of Medicine, and it's still considered as one of the original books on the subject. So we see that he has contributed to the area of medicine as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit more a little bit later. And then we have three aspects of the book: Islamic heritage, Islamic personalities, Islamic behavior, provide the dynamic elements for a progressive Islamic society. So if we want to have that progressive Islamic society, we need to focus on Islamic heritage, all of these Islamic personalities, and Islamic behavior. So the strong elements of Islamic personality, self-respect, piety, fear of God, and the pursuit of truth are meant to give shape to elements and bricks of dynamic, knowledgeable ummah for a strong faith in God. Knowledge is universal. There is no difference between Muslim science and knowledge, and like what we practice about what we say about evolution and other religious knowledge. So if we are all knowledgeable about the contributions of these great scientists in the area of not only chemistry, but biology, physics, and so on, then we are the ones that have to go on and dedicate our lives to gaining knowledge and spreading knowledge, just like those scientists who were so very prominent, getting their inspiration from the work of our sixth Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. So I was talking about the microbiome, and that has become a subject that is so very interesting. There are so many papers that are published, and I pulled out some of the stuff from the internet today because I wanted to share with everyone. And this article that I found on the internet, it's called "Why the Gut Microbiome is Crucial for Your Health." So remember, we are starting this discussion because the sixth Imam is talking to Abu Shakir about all of these tiny little things within our body that he's saying that are so very essential to our health, that you cannot see, but you know they are there because Allah put it there for a reason. And then there are innumerable ones, is what our sixth Imam told Abu Shakir. So our sixth Imam is well aware of the microbiome. And 50 years ago, people became aware of this microbiome and how crucial it is to our health. So our body is full of trillions of bacteria. They are collectively known as, they are not just bacteria, they're bacteria, viruses, and fungus, and they are collectively known as the microbiome. We know that there are certain bacteria that are associated with disease. For example, we have to take antibiotic, right? And that is to kill the bad bacteria. But there are a whole bunch of good bacteria that live in our gut, and they are so very important to our health. The most studied are these bacteria that live within our body, and they are actually more bacterial cells in our body than are actually human cells. So 40 trillion bacterial cells are in our body, and only 30 trillion are human cells. So 10 trillion cells are more bacteria in our body than our own cells. So what do we have to do? And so this article says that if we had to weigh these microbes, they are so very tiny, right? If we had to weigh the 40 trillion, bacterial cells in our body, they would probably weigh 1 to 2 kg, and that is roughly the weight of our brain. So they affect every organ of the body, and they start affecting how we are and how we behave and how healthy we are from the moment that we are born. So as soon as we are born, they start affecting us. So as we are growing up, we get these bacteria first from our mothers. So if our mother was feeding us breast milk, which is so very important, people have discovered all the benefits of feeding the baby with mother's milk and not giving, like the other forms of milk that are out there, because the bacteria, the good bacteria from the mother passes on to the baby, and those are healthy, happy babies. People have started discovering that, maybe like about 60, 70 years ago, how important breast milk is. And then we have the fiber that we ingest, and that fiber produces the short chain fatty acids, which are very important to our gut health. So we need to take a lot of fiber. We all know that. Gut bacteria also control our immune system. So we know how important this is to our health now, right now, with this COVID thing going on, that we need to be sure that our immunity is up, because anytime we have this, like the crack in immunity, or let's say we are stressed out, or we are depressed, or we are not eating well, or we are not sleeping well, it affects our immunity. So the microbiome controls how our bodies respond to infection as well. And then this was the most important thing that was just discovered maybe about 10 years ago, is that the microbiome, the tiny little things that the 60 mom is talking about, they control the brain function. So how happy we are, how stress-free we are, and how we behave with other people are controlled by these tiny little things that live within our body that we can't even see, which is just amazing. So one of the things that, like we all are on this quest is to reduce weight, right? That's something that I'm working on. With this COVID thing happening, like staying at home and eating good food and not going out and going out for walks and so on. Now we are, but people have gained weight. Most of us have put on some pounds because of this COVID and being constrained to, like our homes and not being able to go out anywhere. So the microbes, they contribute to weight gain. So they have done studies where somebody is fed like a high sugar diet, and the kind of microbiome that grows inside your gut with this high sugar diet then controls your brain and tells you to eat more sugar. So you are kind of like populating your gut with these bad bacteria that are controlling your brain and telling you eat more, eat more, eat more sugar. So when we watch out what we put into our bodies, and we watch out, like we are sure that we are eating the high fiber diet and keeping away from, like the refined sugars, keeping away from things that are going to harm our body, we actually cultivate good bacteria inside our gut that then control our brain and tell us to eat healthy, eat healthy, eat healthy. So it's the bacteria inside our gut that controls our brain. Like a lot of times I'll give you an example, like it's hard to believe how bacteria would control your brain, but I'll give you an example that sometimes when you're really stressed out, you actually go to the bathroom more often. Like I actually have like loose motions. People have loose motions when they are really stressed out. So you can see the connection between the brain and the gut, that connection is there. And so we have to watch out what we put inside our body. And a lot of times when we have bloating and cramps and pain in our stomach, it is because of our microbiome. It affects our heart health, it affects, like our immunity, and then it affects also the risk of diabetes. So they have done studies where, like there's like type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and they have looked at little kids to see if they are at a high risk for developing diabetes, and they found that if the diversity of the microbiome is low, then you have diabetes. So the microbiome has to be diverse in our body. It has to be, like all kinds of microbiome together And that will happen when we eat a variety of foods, not just get stuck with like one kind of meals, but then eat a range of foods that will give us that diverse microbiome. So we have to make sure that we are eating, like the dal and the fruit, and make sure that we are taking a lot of fiber to stay healthy. And then the other thing that can improve what is growing in our tummy, the gut microbiome, is eating fermented foods. For example, yogurt, and like we have this drink that when we go to Karbala and Najaf, they have this drink. I forget what it's called, but it's like it has like a lot of beneficial bacteria as well. And I have seen that in the in Indian and like Mediterranean stores. They have this yogurt like drink that is fermented, and you can drink that. That will increase the good bacteria. And this bacteria that are associated with like yogurt and so on, they are called lactobacilli, and they will reduce the amount of disease causing species in the gut. Reduce the intake of artificial sweeteners. So a lot of times I know that, like people want to have artificial sweeteners, they want to keep away from sugar. But the best thing is to keep away from artificial sweeteners as well. For example, aspartame. And what that does is it stimulates the growth of those unhealthy bacteria in the gut. And then eating prebiotic foods that stimulate the growth of healthy bacteria. What's listed over here is artichokes, bananas, asparagus, oats, and apples. And then for those of us who are, like mothers, breastfeed for at least 6 months is what the doctors tell us now. It's good to breastfeed for, like more than 6 months. Each of my kids, I did that for, like I think like 1.5 years at least. So at least 6 months is like the minimum. And it's important because then the good bacteria from the mother is going to the child. Eat whole grains. So we have to like make sure that we have good fiber inside our body, like the beta glucan, and then those are get digested by the gut bacteria, and they benefit weight, risk of cancer, diabetes, and other disorders. Eat food that is rich in polyphenols. I know that I'm using a lot of chemistry words here, but polyphenols are plant compounds, and they are found in green tea, dark chocolate, olive oil, whole grains. Those again get broken down by the microbiome, and they stimulate healthy bacterial growth. We can take those probiotic supplements. There are lots available on the market. We can take those and then reduce the amount of antibiotics. Don't do antibiotics unless you are 100% sure that, like you have to check with the doctor, make sure that you really need the antibiotic if you have any kind of infection. Make sure, so a lot of times we might have antibiotics sitting in our shelf from something that happened to us maybe 6 months ago. And now, like we have fever and whatever is happening, and we think, oh, let me just go back and take that antibiotic because it's going to make me get better again. That's a really bad idea. We have to check with the doctor. A lot of times, if it's a viral infection, then you don't need the antibiotic. And the antibiotic, what it does is it kills everything. Okay, so it kills the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And it takes a long time for that good balance of the good bacteria to be there, and way more than the bad ones. So you have to, by the time you establish that balance again, like you have to really work at establishing the balance again. So if we have, like an imbalance of unhealthy microbes that are living in our intestines, they'll contribute again to weight gain, high blood sugar, high cholesterol, and other things. So we have to make sure that we don't take antibiotics unless we check with the doctor, and the doctor says that it's, like it's essential. So let's all go on this journey of being healthy. especially with this COVID going on. We want to make sure that what we put inside our body is something that is healthy, that's going to create this good microbiome that our 60 mom talks about, and we all stay healthy, inshallah. So, my dear friends, switching topics, what I wanted to cover today also is something that I came across that I would probably read and just go on, like not really think too much about it. But with the current situation of, like we see so much oppression and injustice with what happened to Mr. George Floyd, we saw the, like the police brutality, and he was saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. That really struck all of us. And it brought to our attention something called racism. And it's a big word, it's a nasty word. And we don't want to have anything to do with it, and especially being followers of the Holy Alabad. And we know that starting with the Prophet himself, his mission was to eradicate that racism, because he instilled that teaching that everybody is equal in the sights of Allah. The ones who are special are the ones who have more taqwa. So we all know that. And so racism is something that, like we want to make sure that we are not practicing it unknowingly. And knowingly, of course, none of us will do that, being followers of the Holy Alphabet. And again, as I was going through the life story of our sixth Imam, there's like a beautiful incident that caught my attention. And of course, before I go to that beautiful incident that, like that talks about our sixth Imam and what his personality is like, I want to mention also something that I kind of knew, but I didn't really pay attention to that fact, that the sixth Imam's wife was African. So she was somebody who had that very dark color. And so our seventh Imam's mother was African. And then as I was learning more, it turns out that the seventh Imam's wife, the sixth Imam's wife, or the seventh Imam's mother was the one who selected the bride for the seventh Imam, and she was also African. So you can imagine, that our Imams, they practice uh, this equality by making sure that they marry somebody irrespective of their color, but only dependent on how they are, like what their personality is, how God fearing they are, what their moral code is like, what their personalities are like. And so it didn't really matter what color somebody was, black, blue, purple, white. It just depended on the amount of taqwa somebody had and their character, which was the criteria for selection of a companion. So the sixth Imam, his wife was African, the mother of the seventh Imam, and then the seventh Imam again married somebody who was African. So that was something that was a little bit of a surprise for me. And I am sure people know about this, and I was the one that was ignorant about it, I think. But the beautiful incidents that I want to talk about is it's something that happened in the life of the sixth Imam. And he was very close to this person. And this person would accompany the sixth Imam everywhere he went. And the sixth Imam also enjoyed this person's company. So one day, the man was accompanying the sixth Imam's friend was accompanying the sixth Imam to the bazaar. And this was a bazaar of cobblers. Cobblers are somebody who repairs shoes. And this man had a black slave who was going behind him. He was moving behind the Imam and this man, because they were walking together. But the slave belonged to that man. And so as they were walking through the shops, the slave was busy looking at the shops and, like looking at what's going on in the shops. And slowly he got away from his master. So the sixth imam and the friend of the sixth imam, they were walking ahead and the slave was walking behind, and as he was getting busy like looking at the shops and so on, getting distracted, he lost track of his master. And so this man went back to find his slave and he found him. And to the annoyance of our sixth imam, this man started abusing the slave. And it wasn't, like it wasn't like he was hitting him or anything. He just said something bad about his mother. He said, "Your mother so and so, where were you? Why were you not with me? Why aren't you paying attention?" And he started abusing this slave's mother. As soon as the sixth Imam heard that, he was so struck by this man that he thought is his friend, and this is how he behaved, that he told him, "You abuse his mother. I thought you were a pious man, and I was a friend of yours for a long time. And I have talked about you in the assembly of friends and companions. It is good that I came to know that you are not a good friend. Hurry and get away from me." So this is so surprising that this man who used to follow the sixth Imam everywhere, that was his friend, the sixth Imam would spend time with him and talk about him to his other friends and companions, that looking at how he's behaving towards this person of, the slave who's a black slave, the way he's talking, it's not even like, like he was doing something physically. It was just something that he said with his mouth. Okay, he said something abusive about his mother, and our sixth Imam told him, "Get away from me." So we can imagine how we have to be sure that we are not even thinking those thoughts in our head, and being the followers of the Holy Alibad, that we take care, because, like we are not going to say abusive words, of course, but even thoughts that cross our mind, we have to like monitor it and make sure that none of those thoughts cross our brain of racism and so on, that our mullah has to say, like God forbid, that we don't belong to him. So we just really have to watch out. And, like I said, I have read this so many times, but because of the things that are happening around us today, when I read that, like there were tears in my eyes, because I could see the personality of our sixth Imam shining through, because he is showing by his behavior, not just speech, but also behavior, how we need to behave with other people. And it doesn't matter whether somebody's, like what color somebody is, we really have to watch out for even what thoughts enter our brain and how we behave. So, like I said, the sixth Imam, the seventh Imam, I think I'm not 100% sure, but the 10th Imam also had somebody who was African origin as his wife. And so we have to watch out then, like people that come to us claiming the hand of our daughter or our son, that our criteria again is the character of that person and their love for the Holy Alibad, and whether they are Muslims or not. And that should be it, not the color of the skin. That should be the last thing. That should be not the thing that even crosses our mind, that we are looking at somebody's color and deciding whether or not they get to claim our son or daughter's hand. So, with that, my dear friends, I am towards the end of what I wanted to share with all of you, and I thank you for your attention. Just want to mention a few sayings of the sixth Imam. And then I also have this dua that I recite after Fajr namaz to increase the sustenance, that I want to tell you about as well. And because all of us, like I know that a lot of us are having that challenge, like a lot of us don't have the job that we were working on, or the business is not doing so well because of this COVID situation. So we all need this dua. to increase our sustenance that the sixth Imam has taught us. So I'm going to like go through some of the sayings and then the dua, and then inshallah we'll finish with the dua of the sixth Imam. So the sixth Imam says that the result of love and attachment with the world is inconvenience, trouble, and sorrow. And the result of piety and purity in the world is the comfort of body and soul. And then there is about being kind to our mother and father, which we all know. But as a reminder, be kind to your father and mother so that your children may as well be kind to you. And then this is about the sustenance, increasing our risk. Pray to God that your sustenance does not lay in the hand of people. So we need to do that. Pray to Allah that our sustenance does not depend on other people, that our sustenance is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, we have to do hard work. And that's another thing that our sixth Imam taught, that, like we are running out of time, but he taught the importance of hard work, that we pray to Allah to increase our risk, of course, but then we make sure that we work hard towards getting that risk, and we are not just sitting idle, blaming, like the situation around us for the loss of risk. Okay, then, so I think that's about it. There's the last thing about not being jealous. Take distance from being jealous of others, because this will be the cause of your becoming away from Allah. So jealousy is something that does not cross our brain. And anytime that we see somebody has a lot more than us, then we just pray to Allah to increase their risk for them, and then pray to Allah that, oh Allah, give me risk as well. Okay, so this is the dua of the sixth Imam, and it says, Abdullah ibn Sinan says that I complained to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam about the lack of risk, and the Imam said, should I teach you something that whenever you read it, Allah will pay off your debts, remove poverty, and improve your condition? And I said, I am in great need of such a dua. So then the sixth Imam told this person, Abdullah ibn Sinan, to recite this dua. And I'm going to read this because I read it and he said, read it after. So he told him to recite the following after morning namaz. So after namaz-e-fajr, we have to recite this dua. And I have to check and see whether it's also in at this, like duas.org. I don't know if it is there, but this is kind of like short. And it's not very long. I think the more longer dua is there on duas.org. If you would Google Imam Jafar Sadiq dua on risk or sustenance, increasing sustenance, you'll find a longer version of this dua. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm reciting this dua for all of us. Inshallah, Allah is going to increase our risk, and He's going to pay off our debts, remove poverty, and improve our condition, inshallah ta'ala. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tawakkaltu ala al-hayy alladhi la yamutu walhamdulillahi alladhi lam yattakhiz sahibatan wala waladan wa lam yakul lahu sharikun في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبر تكبيرا اللهم إني أعوذ بك من البؤس والفخر ومن غلبة الدين والسخم أسألك أن تعينني على أداء حقك إليك وإلى الناس. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So inshallah ta'ala, this is going to remove poverty from us and improve all our conditions. And inshallah, when I speak to you next, everybody is going to be happier and everyone is going to be more content, inshallah ta'ala. And with that, my dear friends, I take your leave. Keep me in your du'as, and I keep you in my du'as whenever I recite Namaz-e-Shab every day. I remember all of you, so please remember me in your du'as. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.